He was kicked out of the mall in front of a crowd, branded as a symbol of hate over a single red hat with the words MAGA. The manager shouted across the hall, ordering security to get rid of the provocateur, reveling in his authority. But no one expected that this provocateur would turn out to be the owner of the entire building. The crowd's reaction, the hero's words, and the aftermath of that day changed everything. Let's start from the beginning. John Harris, a successful entrepreneur with staunch Republican beliefs, walked into the Liberty Way Mall in the heart of New York City. He wore a red hat emblazoned with the words MAGA, not as a loud statement, but with genuine pride. For John, this simple accessory symbolized his convictions, without infringing on anyone else's life. The mall buzzed with morning activity. People grabbed coffee, rushed into boutiques, or leisurely wandered in search of new finds. Yet, within 5 minutes, John felt an odd stare directed at him. It came from Richard Lansing, the manager of Liberty Way Mall. Richard's expression was tense and scrutinizing, as though he were hunting for any excuse to call out a visitor. "Good morning, sir," Richard began curtly, nodding toward John's red hat. "I'm not sure that such headwear is appropriate in our mall." John maintained a polite smile. "Good morning to you as well. What's wrong with my hat?" "You must understand that such symbolism can provoke a negative reaction from other patrons," Richard stated. "We strive to maintain a neutral environment here. I must ask you to remove the hat or leave the premises." John frowned slightly but remained calm. "So, you're saying my clothing is a cause for concern? That's a rather unique policy for a place named Liberty Way." Richard adjusted his jacket, striving to appear in full control. "I'm merely trying to prevent conflicts that could arise from people expressing political opinions too openly. So, please, either take off the hat or exit the building." Passers-by began whispering and casting curious glances between Richard and John. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording, anticipating a confrontation. But John wasn't about to back down just because some people didn't like the words on his hat. "That sounds like discrimination," he calmly concluded, keeping the hat firmly on his head. "Perhaps we should discuss this in a more private setting." "There's nothing to discuss," Richard snapped. "It's my rules or nothing." His face radiated the confidence of someone who believed he was firmly in charge. But Richard had no idea who he was dealing with. At Richard's signal, 2 security guards approached John, Mark, and Sam. They exchanged uneasy glances. After all, John wasn't doing anything illegal. He was simply standing there wearing a hat. But orders were orders. "Sir," Mark began quietly, "we've been instructed to ask you to leave the mall unless you remove the hat." John sighed, a restrained smirk forming on his lips. "All right, but do you understand what you're doing? Isn't it still legal in America to wear a hat with a political slogan, as long as it doesn't harm anyone?" Sam, trying to keep the situation from escalating, replied, "We're just following the manager's instructions. Sorry about this." A small crowd started gathering. People pulled out their phones, recording videos, and a few voices began calling out in support of John. "Hey, what's with the bias? That's freedom of speech." But Richard only grew more agitated. Determined not to appear weak, he escalated his demands. "Security, remove him immediately. We won't tolerate political grandstanding here." John met Richard's gaze with a calm, unwavering expression. "If this place doesn't respect the rights of its visitors, then there's no point in arguing. I'll leave voluntarily. But believe me, there will be consequences." "By all means," Richard sneered. "Next time, think twice before coming here with provocative symbols." The guards hesitated but stepped closer, clearly uncomfortable with their role in the escalating drama. Meanwhile, the crowd murmured in disapproval, with some shouting for calm, while others started dialing the police just in case. The tension in the air suggested that chaos could break out at any moment. "All right, gentlemen, let's stay calm," John said, raising his hands to show he wasn't resisting. "I'll go, but perhaps you should take a look at this document before proceeding." With that, he handed over a folder and gave the guards a knowing wink. They hesitated before passing it to Richard. As Richard skimmed the document, his expression quickly turned pale. The confidence drained from his face, replaced by shock. The crowd looked on, phones still recording, eager to see what would happen next. Richard read the document again, likely hoping it was some kind of mistake. But it was clear and official. John Harris was the principal shareholder and the effective owner of Liberty Way Mall as of last week. This must be a joke," Richard stammered, his voice trembling. You're the owner?" "That's right," John replied nonchalantly, adjusting his red hat. "I purchased the mall to revamp it into a more modern, open, and inclusive space. I didn't announce anything because I wanted to see how things operated here. Think of this as a secret visit, and I must say, you've thoroughly disappointed me." Richard blinked rapidly, clearly unsettled. Around them, curious patrons had gone silent. Their interest in the unfolding drama now doubled. A few chuckled, realizing the absurdity of the situation. "Mr. Harris," Richard began, scrambling to sound less authoritative, "I didn't mean anything personal. It's just, we have rules here. We wanted to avoid personal prejudice against political beliefs is not rules," John interrupted, his tone calm but firm. "It's your personal bias which you projected onto me, your new boss." John turned to the crowd, which erupted in applause. Cameras continued rolling, and the entire scene was undoubtedly already hitting live streams and social media. Richard, who moments ago had exuded power and confidence, now looked small and sheepish, unsure of where to hide his embarrassment. "Well," John concluded, glancing at the security guards, "you two are just doing your jobs. No harm there. But the one giving the orders clearly misunderstood what freedom means." Richard stared at the papers in his hand, still hoping to find some loophole to salvage the situation. But the crowd wasn't about to let up, and a few onlookers began mocking him. "Come on, Richard. Explain to us again why John can't wear a hat in his own mall. Maybe put up a sign, 'No red hats allowed,' huh?" The room filled with laughter and applause. Finally, Richard summoned all his courage and forced out an apology. "Mr. Harris, I apologize for my behavior. It was a mistake." "Mistake is putting it lightly," John replied, still composed. "I think you'll need to do more than apologize to repair the reputation of Liberty Way Mall. After all, we don't want people to feel unwelcome here simply because their views differ from yours." Richard flushed a deep red, fully aware that his career was hanging by a thread. "I'll do everything I can to make this right," he promised. "I'll reevaluate the policies, listen to feedback." John nodded, a hint of sympathy flashing in his eyes. "I certainly hope so. For starters, I'd like you to draft a formal apology and publish it wherever visitor updates are typically posted. Let's make it clear that Liberty Way Mall truly stands for freedom." The crowd erupted into cheers. Someone let out a low whistle, impressed by how effortlessly John had put his seemingly untouchable manager in his place. Cameras continued recording, and videos of this dramatic turn of events were already spreading across social media, destined to spark heated discussions about the Red Hat incident. "Oh, you're in for it now, Richard," one bystander quipped with a wink. "New owner, new rules." John gave a polite wave to the crowd and, still proudly wearing his MAGA hat, strolled toward the nearest coffee shop. He felt a little tired but deeply satisfied. Now he had first-hand knowledge of how visitors were treated in his mall, and he was ready to make sure it became a space of genuine freedom, free from bias and discrimination. Thus, the memorable scene came to an end. Richard would have to face the consequences of his actions and endure public scrutiny, while John proved that true strength lies in calmly and confidently standing up for one's rights and beliefs, even if it's over something as simple as just a red hat.